The Anatomy of Story is an amazing craft book that I absolutely adore, written by John Truby. If you haven't heard me talk about it before, I have a video where I talk over the pros and cons. I think I have a full playlist where I talk through some of the points of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to use ELF to understand the anatomy of the story. Now, the Anatomy of Story is all about making a story organic. Going from kind of your premise, taking an innovative designing principle, and building your story around 7 steps. These 7 steps aren't beats necessarily so much as they are things that are supposed to be organically engraved in your story. So basically, I'm going to talk through the premise, designing principle, and then the 7 steps, and really get into a discussion of character and what makes this story so good, especially that catharsis we feel at the end. That's like, just joy. Just joy. A premise is something that should be stated in one sentence. It's a simple combination of character, plot, and typically consists of some event that starts the action, some sense of the main character, and some sense of the outcome of the story. So I would say that the premise of this movie is a human who has been raised by elves in the North Pole ventures to New York City to find his birth family, but his father is on the naughty list. There we go. The next part is the designing principle. Designing principle is a lot harder. I'm going to read out what it says. The designing principle is what organizes the story as a whole. It is the internal logic of the story, what makes the parts hang together organically, so that the story becomes greater than the sum of its parts. It is what makes the story original. Designing principle equals story process plus original execution. So I would say that the kind of, like the way I would sell the story, like the unique twist on it, which is sometimes confused with the designing principle, is this is basically Mary Poppins at Christmas time, where Mary Poppins is an elf. But the designing principle, from what I understand of it, is how the story is told. And if we think back to Elf and like how it begins, it actually starts with a book opening and then Papa Elf being like, hello there. So it's really, the movie is framed as a fairy tale told by Papa Elf. And I think overall, how that makes it organic and unique is it really sets up the fantasy element, whilst the fantasy element and the humor, and allows the two to coexist. And also by bringing in that memory of a fairy tale, I think it really helps the story to become more timeless. Okay, so that's the premise and the designing principle. The next step, part of Anatomy of Story, are the 7 key steps of story structure. And this is what we're going to spend most of our time on. The 7 steps are weakness and need, desire, opponent, plan, battle, self-revelation, and new equilibrium. Let's start by talking about steps 1 and 2. Weakness and need. So that is basically saying that our protagonist needs to have some sort of psychological or moral weakness, and they need to have a need. And that need is basically the solution to that weakness. The need is what the hero has to fulfill within himself in order to have a better life. It usually involves overcoming his weaknesses and changing or growing in some way. So our protagonist is Buddy. And his weakness is that he feels like he doesn't belong. It's a very psychological weakness. He feels like he's worthless at the North Pole, especially after he finds out that he's human. His character arc is what I would call worldview education. He kind of realizes he has meaning and worth. He does not have a moral weakness. His values, his personality, none of that changes. It's a psychological weakness, however, and his need is to recognize his own value. Now, skipping a little bit to number 3, our main opponent here is Walter Hobbs, Buddy's father. Walter has been prioritizing work over his family, and he continues to do so. So he continuously, chooses his work, chooses the work, and neither his wife nor his other son Michael, wife Emily, other son Michael, are getting the sort of love that they need. He also is a little bit cynical. He's shown really choosing money over kindness. He insists on taking the books back from an orphanage because they weren't able to pay. He rejects Buddy. He's really not into Christmas, not into spending time with his family. So that was the opponent. Now we're going to go back a little bit to desire. Because the Anatomy of Story says that the hero and their opponent need to want the same thing. Like in a crime story, John Truby says the hero and the opponent both want their version of the truth to be believed. Now, so in figuring out the desire for Buddy, I also had to figure out the desire for Walter and make them the same. And I struggled with this a little bit. So, Buddy wants to be accepted and included in his family. That's super obvious. But from the outside of the story, it looks like Walter just wants to succeed at work. Like, that is his thing. He wants to do well at work. If I was writing this story, though, I would dig a bit deeper and think, okay, why does Walter want to succeed at work? Well, my first thought is that he wants to provide for his family. However, his family kind of seems provided for, so we have to kind of dig a bit deeper. And I started thinking, okay, maybe Walter started out wanting to provide for his family, and he realized he was missing time with them and hurting them by doing that. That's his moral weakness. His moral weakness is that he keeps choosing work, prioritizing money, and that is hurting his family. He's hurting his son, he's hurting his wife. This is also happily hinted at in the Santa scene where Santa tells Buddy that his father is on the naughty list. And so he actually invested more in work. I'm just making this up in my mind to make it make sense. So let's say he invested more in work because if he fails at work, then he sacrificed family time and it was all for nothing. So if Walter fails at work, he feels like he's failed his family. So he works more and more. So I think that at his core, Walter also wants to be accepted, loved, and included in his family. He's just going about it all the wrong way. And so there we have it. Walter and Buddy have the same desire. They both want to be accepted, loved, and included in their family. This is how we get a strong, relatable opponent, by the way. The intentions are in the right place, but he's going about getting what he wants in all the wrong ways. So now we have a hero and opponent who want the same thing. And the hero and the opponent have their own weakness and need. Buddy's being the need to feel like he belongs, and Walter's being the need to prioritize his family and show them love. Our second opponent here is Jovi. Wait, what? Our second opponent is Jovi, the love interest? Yes. From a formal structure perspective, the love interest is always the opponent in the story. This doesn't mean they're a bad person, they're definitely not a villain, but structurally they're against each other and they want the same thing. Jovi and Buddy, it's very easy. They both want to be in a relationship, eventually with each other. Michael and Emily are Buddy's allies, and they each have problems of their own. What I would say is that it's basically a variation on the Jovi's problem. They're struggling as a family unit, and they really aren't in the Christmas spirit. You know, Jovi says she hates Christmas. Michael's very cynical. He's like, ugh, Christmas. Everyone's basically screwed. In fact, this is a characteristic of the traveling angel kind of story, like Mary Poppins, like Elf, where everyone Buddy encounters is comparatively low on Christmas spirit. They're all focused on their own problems. They're all cynical about Christmas. They've all kind of forgotten, and they're all not prioritizing, spending time with their family and investing in the magic. We know this because of the clausometer, too, at the beginning, where they were like, look, Buddy, the clausometer is real low. Everyone's low on Christmas spirit. And Buddy's like, gosh darn, how is everyone so low on Christmas spirit? So, the entire world also has a weakness here. So then we hit plan. Your hero needs a plan. They have to do something. In the Anatomy of Story, they say it could be a vague plan or a very specific plan. Here, I think that Buddy's plan is pretty vague. He plans to go to New York, stay with his father, and basically become best friends with him, make sugar plums, go ice skating, etc., and get himself off the naughty list. It's a pretty big plan, but we can see precisely why it works so well in this movie. Walter's moral weakness is that he isn't giving his family the attention and love they need. So when Buddy shows up, Walter just sees him as another problem. But Buddy wants to spend all this time with him, and he's the one who's able to say, I want to spend time with you, I want to spend time with you, which Walter's wife, Emily, and his son, Michael, aren't saying. So Buddy is attacking Walter's exact weakness, but he's attacking it in a very, sweet, loving, Buddy the Elf way, which makes us all laugh, but really that's what makes the story work so well, is that Buddy is the perfect opponent for Walter, because he is attacking him right where it hurts. Insert John Mulaney quote here.
And I'm like, no, that's the thing I'm sensitive about.
The battle is defined as the hero and the opponent's final conflict. Now, the hero is Buddy, and the opponent is Walter. However, their plot kind of gets resolved a little early. It gets resolved a little early. So we have their last conflict is actually when Walter, yells at Buddy. He's like, I don't care that you're my son. Get out of here. Get out of my life. Then Buddy has what we could think of as a visit to death. He goes and he stands on a bridge. And then he sees Santa crashing in the park. He finds Santa. Santa says he needs an elf's help. And this is basically Buddy's self-revelation, that he is useful, he's needed. However, then, Michael goes to visit Walter at work, and then Walter has a revelation. He realizes that he loves both his sons so much, and he has to prioritize them over work, and when his boss won't let him, he says, "Up yours," and he runs off. So that is his revelation, that he needs to prioritize his family, and he cannot send his son away. I don't know if I would call that the battle, though. But from this point, there is no more direct conflict between Buddy and Walter. So let me know what you think about that. But the battle actually comes in, and it's sort of between like Buddy, Santa, Christmas, and everyone else, which is personified by the Central Park Rangers. Jovi takes a major action as part of self-revelation when she starts singing. But it's not just Jovi. I think what makes gives Elf such a great ending is that it's actually a triple reversal. So a double reversal, as defined by Anatomy of Story, is when the hero and the opponent both have revelations. Obviously, that happens here. Buddy realizes that he's worthwhile and he, can contribute and that he does belong. He has a role, and Walter realizes that he has been hurting his family and that he needs to prioritize them and be with them, and he wants to do that. So they both have a double reversal. Beautiful. But it's not just a double reversal, because also Jovi realizes, and she does this when she starts to sing, that, Christmas is something that she can invest in, and she can show her love and that kind of thing. And then everybody else, in fact, everyone Buddy has encountered, first Michael, then Jovi, then Emily, then all the characters we've seen throughout the movie, and then finally Walter, they all learn the same lesson. They all learn to pause in their lives to just express the Christmas spirit. And they all learn how important that is. And they're all in it. And they're all in it with togetherness and wonderfulness. And it's this massive universal revelation that just leads to the winning of the battle when the sleigh takes off. And it's incredible. And how they did that was having the revelation happen at so many layers. And having Buddy really, obviously, having created that revelation for everyone else. And then, of course, we have the new equilibrium where they're all a family, and Buddy and Jovi get married, and Buddy finds harmony between his human and his elf self while still being close to his human family, and it's all beautiful, and we go and get more hot chocolate and put in the next DVD. I am so excited to have talked about Elf. I've been wanting to talk about Christmas movies so much because I love Christmas movies so much. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to hear more from me, definitely subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow with another video. Ta-ta!